Congressional leaders have written a new letter addressed to Inspector General of the intelligence community on specifics of whistleblower David Grusch's congressional testimony. Congressman Tim Burchett tweeted yesterday, during the UAP hearing, David Grusch testified he could not provide specific details about UAP crash retrieval programs or reverse engineering programs, but said the intelligence community Inspector General could. So my colleagues and I wrote to him to ask for details. The letter, signed by Representatives Tim Burchett, Jared Moskowitz, and Anna Paulina Luna, Nancy Mace, Eric Burleson, and Andy Ogles, who have largely been front and center leading the UAP inquiries on Capitol Hill, they write that considering Mr. Grusch's testimony was under oath, we request answers to the following questions. Which intelligence community members, positions, facilities, military bases, or other actors are involved with UAP crash retrieval programs, directly or indirectly? And which intelligence community members, positions, facilities, military bases, or other actors are involved with UAP reverse engineering programs, directly or indirectly?
Meanwhile, recently, Jeremy Corbell stressed the need for government transparency about UFOs in a conversation with Chris Cuomo. Let's watch.
They want to make an example of David Grusch. When I say they, I mean the people that do not and are not for transparency and disclosure. Friends of mine that are not for it, from the legacy UFO programs, like the long durational ones, they say, I'm with you as a friend, but no, do not kick a sleeping dog. This doesn't get out. I go, why? Tell me why. Give me one reason why. What's so scary that you have to be daddy and keep this from the American public? Not once has somebody answered me appropriately, clearly, with facts that allow me to get behind that. Not once. And it makes me think this is all about power and control of small groups that don't want to give it up. And the closer we get to the goodies, the more pushback we're going to get. He was saying, I can't tell you here because this is a public hearing. And if I do, they will literally snatch me up, put me in jail, make an example out of me, and scare everybody else that wants to come forward. And the cover-up continues.
Well, I think this is exactly what we've been calling for on the show for a while, Robby.
Yes, the specific actors who are guilty of this alleged cover-up, the agencies involved, the person involved. Grusch said he couldn't say exactly who that was, but that this Inspector General does know. So they have directed their inquiry to the right person. I'm sure they're going to get a response, no comment, because these individuals need to be compelled to give up this information. I suspect they're not going to go, oh, well, Tim Burchett seems like a cool dude, but now that he's asked me nicely, I'm going to actually give up the goodies, as was described in this interview. Like, that's obviously not going to happen.
Well, I guess there is an argument that he's willing to talk, but just off the record, right? That, I can't publicly say these things for national security reasons.
Congress passed a law to compel Joe Biden to force the intelligence community to tell the public everything they know about the origins of COVID. And that was it was bipartisan legislation. Like, everybody voted for it. Yeah. Joe Biden signed it. Like, finally. Then what did that mean in practice? It gave us a little handout summarizing what was already public information.
So in that case, I think the argument is the government is not wanting to disclose their own involvement in funding some of the research that
even when explicitly compelled to do so by bipartisan Congress and the president.
Right. So the interests of the government in protecting its own interests are clear. Yeah. What is the argument here? Do we believe that is this evidence that there really are UAPs because the government isn't potentially willing to do more disclosures?
I mean, with this and wrapping in the COVID origins thing, which I am still so miffed about, this goes to the corruption of our democracy at the hands of what I'm concerned about a lot of time, which is a permanent, non-elected bureaucratic state that even in a clear case where the democratic forces, the president, the people, the members of Congress, give a clear directive reflecting the will of the people, we still don't get it because there are all these secret keepers that are just not accountable, that operate their own little, this is the deep state idea, the state within a state that it remains regardless of which administration is in power and has its own agenda, a neoconservative foreign policy agenda, a very kind of cloak and dagger secrecy that has seeped into COVID and some other areas, and maybe this, I don't know, I can't tell. But it's real, it exists. I mean, maybe they think they're doing the best. They're keeping. We can't handle the truth, and they think of themselves as telling the noble lie or whatever it is. But it does exist. It's not democratic at all.
Is that then basically an acknowledgement that the only way we're going to really know about any of this is if someone takes it upon themselves to be a really substantive whistleblower,
Yes.
and not just say I saw or I heard someone tell me they saw,
for sure.
but to get the photographs, to steal the bodies, to chip off a piece of the hull of the spacecraft, whatever it is, and bring it before the public.
Yes. Again, to bring up the COVID example, right? So there is some whistleblower now. They haven't come forward. They told various writers and the Wall Street Journal that the U.S. actually does have intelligence, that those 3 scientists got sick first in the lab, and that would point pretty conclusively to a lab leak theory. Those people haven't come forward or shared what documents with you and I and the public at large. So we're reliant on reporting from people who purport to have seen it. So something like that needs to occur in both cases, where we get direct access to the information.
Is the implication also that the aliens are also complicit in wanting to remain secret?
Well, they're dead, right? They crash landed?
Well, no, people have all these sightings constantly. Not that every single
right.
UAP is aliens, but this is an ongoing phenomenon. So if you believe
they're like
that
little
some portion
pixies,
of them,
like they like to play tricks on people and then stay hidden from view like some fantasy medieval creature.
I mean, look,
This is my...
If the government, if they were, let's say, if the government were, killing and stacking up alien bodies in a warehouse somewhere, or were somehow adversarial to the aliens, you would presume, given all of this interest in them, that there would be plenty of advantage of them coming forward and revealing themselves. But as described, they're furtive. They speed away when observed.
Yeah.
That's ostensibly the difficulty in getting good pictures of the craft. There are no pictures that we know of the bodies, even though Grusch's testimony is that he knows someone who has seen the body.
Right.
And if that's
this is
the case,
the behavior of fictional creatures, pixies, leprechauns, gnomes.
I mean, so what you're saying is that it's a convenient narrative for if something isn't real to explain why you can't put your hands or eyes on it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so that's what I think about the identification of actual visitation by actual alien matter, alien bodies. I find that extremely unlikely, even though that is what has been alleged by Grusch and others. The spacecrafts, or it could be satellites, some technology, some evidence of some off-world presence is a little bit easier to believe. I still think it's probably just technology from our government or other governments that we want to keep secret for some reason. Because as we keep kind of arriving at, you and I, when we talk about this, if the military-industrial complex wants to ramp up funding for their own benefit, for whatever, scaring the public into thinking that there are aliens would be the most easy and effective way to do that.
Sure.
As we saw, in the wake of 9/11, the American people would have accepted any violation of their civil liberties, an endless amount of military spending and budget, for this purported existential threat to the West, to America, to Christianity.
The one problem I have with that argument is that the people who are the whistleblowers that are really advancing the argument that there are these UAPs that the government is hiding don't really seem to be making an argument that they're adversarial. I'm not getting the sense that the government is hiding them. There's a plot afoot. No. There's Independence Day is about to go down. We need them to tell the truth so that we can defend ourselves as a race.
They're the Skrulls from the Marvel universe.
They're not saying that. They're not saying, they're going to come down here and solve the energy crisis. But they are neutral enough that, to me, if this really were a plot to support military spending, they would put a little bit more of a dark cast on the characterization of the aliens and the threat. There's no allegation that the ships have weapons or that they behaved in malevolent ways. The pilots describe them kind of whizzing by and just trying to mind their own business, not that they're colliding with spacecraft or hurting people or abducting people. Like that is not the narrative right now. And in fact, in an interview, I think just yesterday, Jeremy Corbell dismissed the idea that UFOs are being or private technology, aerospace engineering technology, corporate technology, hostile enemy technology, anything like that would also justify an arms race and more defense spending on America's end. So, I mean, if this is the plot, then it's not being very well effectuated. Because also, I think maybe this is just my bias of who our audience is, but it does seem to me like there's a significant overlap between the UFO community, the believing community, and people who are very hostile to military interventionism. And so again, I can see how that could be an argument, but I'm not seeing it play out in that particular way.
Yeah, I don't know. It is interesting, and we continue to cover it, and I hope that Tim Burchett and the others are able to finally get answers from this Inspector General. I'm not holding my breath on it, but it has felt a little bit like the cat's out of the bag in the last couple of weeks because there's been so much public interest in this subject and so many people coming forward, not with direct knowledge, but secondhand knowledge. So at some point, someone with direct knowledge has to come forward, and that's the day we're looking forward to. In fact, more Rising right after this.